Hi, hello, welcome back to this short series of tutorials on HIPPO. They're designed to give you a high-level understanding of the features of HIPPO, which is a specialist management, optimization and planning tool for Informatica. In this short video, I'm going to highlight some of the features of the search facility in HIPPO. And you probably think to yourself, good grief, why would I sit through an entire tutorial on searching? Well, the HIPPO search facility is a little bit unusual. It does a lot more than simply name searching. You can search by date and by time of execution, but more interestingly you can search by performance characteristics such as CPU and memory consumed, as well as by the actual SQL that your session task has executed, be that in the building of caches, the reading from source qualifiers, or the writing to targets. So go on, admit it. There's probably a little bit more than maybe you expected. So hopefully you'll stay with me. Let's begin. The screen that you can see here is HIPPO's dashboard screen, and on the left we can see the main HIPPO menu. Let's select the sixth option, which is search. Our search is limited by the date selection active at the time of the search, so be sure to review your date selection at the top of the screen before proceeding. As you can see in the screen here, the first task in doing a search is to select the object type, and you can select from folder, workflow or task. For folders or workflows, HIPPO offers the ability to search by whole or part names, or by time of execution, for all executions of the workflow, or by any workflow in the chosen folder in the date and time frame that you've selected the date selector. For folders, we can search across domain names, repository names and folder names, and for workflows we can search across repository name, folder name, workflow name and execution date and time. I'm going to show you a very quick example. So I'm going to do a workflow search, and I'm going to search by the name of the folder which I think the workflow is living in, which begins or contains the characters CLU as in cluster. And as you can see, as soon as I type those characters in, HIPPO immediately does the search across all of the columns, identifies a folder called FOL_cluster_calcs, and there are 3 workflows in this folder which I've executed during the time frame of this search. So that's great. Very quick, speedy and thorough search facility for either workflows or folders. But let's look at the task search options, which are a little bit more interesting. Let's select task from the drop down, and you'll see straight away that we have search type appearing, and there are 8 different types of search. The first is search all tasks. Search all tasks operates in exactly the same way as a folder and workflow search. It's basically a name or a date and time of execution search. So let's move on to the next option, which is search by memory in megabytes. First of all, you'll see that a threshold field has just appeared. The threshold field allows you to type in the memory resource threshold that you'd like to search against, and all tasks which have exceeded the threshold will be returned by the search dialog. As you can see here, as I enter into the threshold field the value 50 for 50 megabytes, and then press the search button, and HIPPO returns all of the tasks that have consumed 50 megabytes or more in terms of memory consumption for an individual execution of the task. Note that the aggregate memory consumption appears on the right hand side of the screen. To find out more about this execution of the task, then you simply click on the task name itself, and a complete analysis appears. Note too, on the bottom left hand side of your screen, that a new menu has appeared, which enables you to explore this task execution in more detail. Let me just click back, and we'll go back to the search facility. Before I move on, I'd just like to say that whenever you see a folder, workflow or task name appear in HIPPO, then you can drill down, as I just showed you, into that object. So we could drill down again into workflow, and we could also drill down to folder name. Okay, let's move on to the next of our search options, which is CPU in seconds. So this is a CPU usage search, and again you can enter a CPU threshold. This time it's in seconds. So I'm going to type in 75 seconds. I'm going to press search. And all sessions with an execution aggregate CPU consumption greater than 75 are displayed. And you can see the number of CPU seconds per execution on the bottom or on the right hand side of your screen. Again, the screen offers the ability to drill down into the individual sessions and workflows and folders, which have been returned here. If we would like to just show you quickly the folder drill down to folder, and HIPPO returns a detailed analysis of that folder, covering lots of folder metrics about concurrent executions, data movement, social movement, and so on. Very interesting. But back to the search, and we'll go through the other search options. Next up in our list we have cache size in megabytes. So as you probably guess here, we set a threshold of cache size, and HIPPO will return everything which matches or exceeds that threshold. I'm going to type in 600, so every session who's a cache size with a cache which has exceeded 600 megabytes in size will be returned by the search. And there we are, and you can see on the right hand side of the screen the size of the cache type, and the session name. Okay, that's cache size. Let's look at cache spill to disk. This is obviously an either or. Either the session contains a cache which is spilled to disk or it hasn't, so all we need to do is press search. There's no need to enter a threshold value, so we simply press search, and all of those sessions which have a cache which is spilled to disk are returned. As you can see, we have the size of the cache type, and also the session name. Again, moving on, we have time to first row. As you're probably aware, time to first row is a commonly accepted measure of complexity in a mapping. So this is a means of identifying the complex, or perhaps alternatively you could argue some purely performing or overly complex mappings in your environment. And so what you can do is you can type in a threshold for the time taken to reach the time in seconds taken to process the entire first row end to end through the mapping. I'm going to type in 50 again, which is seconds, as you can see, and press search. And HIPPO returns the folder name, workflow name, session name, and the time to first row value. So all of these sessions returned have taken in excess of 50 seconds to process the first row of data end to end through the mapping. Okay, so let's look at our next option, which is SQL overrides. This is the first example of a situation where HIPPO will search not just in performance criteria, but also in criteria from your own internal development and design standards. We have chosen SQL overrides here, but a variety of others can be added to suit your requirements. As you can see, as I spoke, I clicked search, and HIPPO provides details of all of the sessions whose mappings contain SQL overrides. Note that HIPPO reports not just the session name, but also the transformation type and the transformation name. Again, you can drill down and look in more detail about what's happening inside the sessions themselves. And the final search option is one that we're particularly proud of. It's called Executed SQL. It's intended primarily for DBAs, and it enables them to identify which mapping is responsible for an orphan piece of SQL or an especially long-running SQL statement. So here I'm going to select, as I have here, Executed SQL from the drop-down list, and the threshold box appears again. This time I copy and paste or type in the SQL statement which I'd like to track down. I'm going to put in an especially generic SQL statement in my little demo here. So I'm going to type in select, and then I'm going to just put in the wildcard which is applicable throughout HIPPO, which is the percentage sign, and I'm going to simply press search. And essentially HIPPO is now going to look for every single mapping within a session which has a SQL statement which contains the word select. As you can imagine, there's going to be a great number of rows returned in our search dialog. So if you're looking at the screen here, you can see that we have session name or task name, we have transformation type, and we have the transformation name returned. And then if we scroll down to the bottom, HIPPO tells us that it's actually found 9,890 entries in the time frame which have used the word select. Not surprising that there's a very high high number of rows returned for this particular search. But anyway, a truly unique and really useful feature enables us to go from the database into Informatica, which I don't believe there is any other tool at all out there which enables us to do that in this way. And it's extremely useful, as I say, for DBAs to identify orphan pieces of SQL, or the mapping which is responsible for an especially long-running piece of SQL in the database environment. I hope you agree that the search facility in HIPPO is especially useful. You can use it to enforce internal performance and design standards. You can also use it to guide your performance tuning efforts to focus on the biggest resource consumers in your environment. And you can also use it, as I've shown, for simple searches to find individual execution instances either by name or by time and date of execution. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this useful, and I look forward to welcoming you to the next tutorial.